referring to deference to authority and the way we evaluate the substance of a message distorted by our deference to authority was something that did apply more to those who accept the official story than to those who would tend to reject it. And here, I guess I beg to differ, because I think we are all subject to deference to authority, but we pick our authorities differently. But within this group, we defer to authority, and we have to, because cognitive economy requires it. We just can't get through this blooming, buzzing world of information without making some prior judgments about to whom we are going to listen carefully. And I think we all do that. In fact, I'm sure you know, as we all do, that we spend a lot of time rehearsing the credentials of experts. And we do it because we think it'll get us a little deference to authority in some form. I don't think we do it to decorticate people, but we say, you ought to pay attention, this person has something important to say. And so we, like everybody else, defer to authority, but our authorities are different, and maybe I hope that the kind of authorities we defer to are more authentic, have more reason to be deferred to, than the kinds of authorities that many people who oppose our views are likely to defer to.
Thank you, Professor Jenkins. Professor Lee.
I'd like to jump into this elevated, almost philosophical discussion by demurring. First of all, I acknowledge that what you've been referring to are psychological mechanisms that are universal, that affect us all. But I'd like to remind us that what varies in this is the degree of malevolence of which the dominant power possesses, and the degree to which the dominant power's agenda departs from general human welfare and the common good. So let me enlarge on that. So we all bring our critical faculties to bear on the world. We can be fooled. We can be fooled once, twice, three times. But what is unprecedented, I think, is the degree of malevolence of the forces that are arrayed against common sense and the common good in today's world. And so that's what I'd like to focus on. I was thinking about my childhood in Canada with Lester B. Pearson and even John Diefenbaker, and it was a much simpler time. There just wasn't the sheer degree of malevolence, evidence of which have been uncovered in our hearings, the sheer degree of malevolence that is being directed actively by a wide array of forces against people arriving at reasonable decisions. Isn't that what state crimes against democracy is all about? So I want to sort of relieve us from thinking, well, we're all this or we're all that. My second thought is you've very effectively gone over the literature, which is absolutely fascinating, about the study of situations where people can hold on to erroneous views with great conviction and use all kinds of adaptive devices, psychological mechanisms, defense mechanisms for denying, oh, I didn't say that, or even if what you say is true, I still believe my view. So all that can also be somewhat depressing if you sort of say, well, this is what we're up against. On the other hand, we know that throughout history there have been dramatic transformations of consciousness, much of which was achieved with difficulty, sometimes great difficulty, going from the Ptolemaic view of the position of the sun in the solar system to the Copernican and Galilean view, for example, the acceptance of biological evolution, for example. And so I'm wondering if we could make a project out of studying how these psychological transformations are accomplished, because it's a psychological transformation of that magnitude is the only way we're going to get this material into the public space that it needs to be in.
Can I just make a brief comment on that? I agree with you absolutely. And something that occurs to me often is Stanley Milgram's obedience experiments, wherein he was trying to do some experimental studies to help explain some of the behavior of the Nazis and how some people were thought to compartmentalize certain evil actions and then go home to a family and be a regular family person. I mean, you can't make those kinds of assertions from his experiment. They're not, really transferable. But so the one thing that I find so interesting about his experiments is that even though, say, like 75% of the people just easily deferred to authority, there was that one quarter that didn't. And that it's that 1/4, those type of people that we really need to study. We need to start studying the people who don't defer to authority, that are more easily to say, no, not just because you said so. Those are the people. And I just wanted to make just one more comment related to that, is that a member of my family, an elderly member of my family who lived through the Blitzkrieg in England, is much more open to hearing this because she knows the evil that exists in the world than other members of my family who have not lived through that. And I think that's sort of an important point to make.
Yes, Professor Johnson.
Thank you for a very stimulating presentation. The tools of psychology can cut in both directions. And we know that the military has long had employed psychologists to act on their side of this equation. I wonder if you would care to comment on how we identify the misuse, let us call it, of psychology for malevolent purposes, and what we can do to defend against it.
That's an excellent question, because they're out there. And in my paper, I do talk a little bit more about a couple different theories. One is terror management theory, and it's based on the work of some graduate students over 30 years ago, Solomon Pazinski and Greenberg, and they took Ernest Becker's idea of the denial of death, and that people are so dependent upon their worldviews that they will just fight to the death to defend them, both psychologically and physically, and that there are psychologists that know this and they use these mechanisms, and I really focus on that one in response to 9/11, the terror management theory and this terror alert. Like, the psychologists know all this is going on, and there are psychologists that are using it. One book I would point to would be Naomi Klein's The Shock Doctrine, where she goes into extreme detail of how it's done. But I would assume that it's out there and being used all the time.
Thank you. We're a bit over time. Are we good, gentlemen? Okay. Thank you, Lori Manuel.
Okay. Thank you.